Picture it now. You've just been put in a life or death situation. You're dogfighting the last guy on the enemy team, and he's in the better plane. You try your absolute hardest to outplay the opposing guy, and to your astonishment, you actually succeed. Your heart rate rises as you near the moment of truth. Miraculously, you're in a firing position. The enemy plane floats closer and closer to your nose. You hold your breath as you take the shot. You look at the top half of the screen. Well, your one shot, your one opportunity. You could have won the game, but you let it slip. Or did you? You know you aren't really blaming yourself for not getting the kill. After all, it wasn't your fault. The guns didn't feel like doing the one job that they have. But why is that? Why does there seem to be a trend lately of guns not working as well as they should? Well, there is a convenient way to answer this, and that is Realshatter. Realshatter is a mechanic that's been in the game for a while now, but many people might not have known that, because it really didn't affect much in terms of gameplay. This was because it was only implemented on a couple of high-tier cannons. Why a lot of guns have seemingly lost their effectiveness recently can be chalked down to the fact that Realshatter has been implemented after Sky Guardians to more and more aircraft guns. So what is Realshatter exactly? Well, Realshatter is a system in War Thunder that aims to make fragmentation of high explosive shells more realistic. Before Realshatter, upon impact, HE shells would create a sphere of fragments that was more or less consistent every time. But with the introduction of Realshatter, the generation of fragments was changed to be more or less random every time. Now this wouldn't be too bad. In fact, many people would like this as it's technically more realistic. But the issue is, the fragments aren't just more random, there's less fragments in total. This means that the more reliant on fragmentation damage a round is, the less overall damage it's going to do. You can see that this is especially apparent in the Japanese Type 99 20mm. Yet switching over to the other side of the axis, Germany, they seem to be doing just fine with their own 20mm, specifically the MG151. Most BF-109s can equip the MG151, and by extension, the Minengeschoss round that comes with it. This particular round is infamous among War Thunder players for being incredibly lethal. It has the ability to down both fighters and bombers alike in a single short burst. The reason for this comes down to the fact that Minengeschoss is almost pure explosive damage as opposed to fragmentation. It has way more explosive mass in each round too, making each impact extra powerful. Difference in fragmentation values and explosive mass is why not every gun is affected by Realshatter equally. Some factors that reduce the effect of Realshatter include having a gun that is either very high in fire rate, explosive mass, or having a gun with a caliber above 30mm. But without either one of these, a cannon that makes use primarily of fragmentation can take up to hundreds of rounds to finally make an aircraft go down. And at that point, you're better off using alternative methods. It's my advice to ditch the air targets belt for almost any gun that doesn't have Minengeschoss. Although there are some 20mm like the M3, at least in my experience, that seem to do fine most of the time. Air target belts generally always have a majority filled with high explosive rounds, which do the least amount of damage to aircraft now. And any belt that has the letter F in it, avoid like the plague. With HEF rounds, you're essentially dependent on your fragmentation being randomly generated into a good pattern. The second best option is to go for belts that either have a high number of armor piercing or incendiary. These don't explode or cause any fragmentation, but they can pierce through fuel tanks and other internal systems to get to the more important modules, the engine and the pilot. But having to even rationalize why in War Thunder a bullet meant to destroy lightly armored targets is actually the worst one to do that exact task is reason enough to see that Realshatter has issues. Yet to fully explain why Realshatter is a flawed mechanic, one must first take a look at the core of most of War Thunder's problems, balancing gameplay at the cost of realism. This is the root of many complaints, ranging from BR compression to certain vehicles having restricted loadouts. In fact, there was an entire game theory video that just about perfectly summed this up.
In order for a video game to truly stay fun, it seems like there are limits to how much realism you can work in.
So what extent does Gaijin consider realism a detriment to gameplay? Well, at this point it's really hard to tell. Being able to phase your cannon barrel through buildings isn't very realistic, but at the same time, can you imagine trying to play a long-barreled tank in an urban map? Now, Realshatter obviously isn't at the same degree of game changing as this would be, but it follows the same principle. Realshatter, as it stands in the game, is a flawed mechanic. While it pushes War Thunder more to the side of realism, it sacrifices the core aspect of gameplay enjoyability. Having your damage being randomly generated isn't exactly a common idea of fun. You earned your shot on target, and for that you should be rewarded for it.